Then it's back down to Soho. I don't have a slide for this. To the place called the Cos Clothing Store. And the store doesn't have any connection whatsoever to the show, but it does contain a bit of Burr-related history. In the basement of the store is the 200-plus-year-old well related to the Levi Weeks murder mystery. The victim that was killed was found in the bottom of the well, and that well is still there in the basement of the store. It's also said to be haunted. There was a recent Time Out New York piece that listed the most haunted places in New York City, and one of them was the well. Now, while almost all the sites in my book have a connection to the show, there are some, like Cos Clothing Store, that I put in there just because fans of Hamilton, and that's fans of Hamilton the show or fans of Alexander Hamilton, could find things that are interesting and would want to visit other sites. And one of those is the Museum of American Finance. Because of the Alexander Hamilton exhibit and the various Hamilton artifacts. If you haven't seen the exhibit, the Alexander Hamilton room upstairs, you really should go. It's very well done, and it has some fascinating pieces. A few blocks west takes us to Richmond Hill. This is another site that, again, I found fascinating for the different roles that it played in history. Burr meets Washington in Right Hand Man. Who are you? Aaron Burr, sir. And this first meeting between Burr and Washington in real life happened at Richmond Hill, while Washington was using the house as his headquarters in 1776. Then John Adams would later live in the house with his wife Abigail during his tenure as vice president, at least until the government moved to Philadelphia. And finally, Aaron Burr. Aaron Burr purchased the property and lived there for more than 10 years, including he was living there at the time of his duel with Alexander Hamilton. The exchange of letters sung about in Your Obedient Servant took place while Burr was living in the house. Burr eventually lost the property. It was seized by creditors and would later be developed by John Jacob Astor. The house itself no longer stands, although a portion of the property is now part of a landmark district. Now that we've seen where Burr contemplated and initiated the duel, our last stop in the itinerary is Weehawken, New Jersey, which we all know as the site of the duel between Hamilton and Burr. As I mentioned, the show builds and structures around the relationship between Burr and Hamilton, culminating in the duel. Now, a spoiler alert for all those who haven't seen the show, Hamilton doesn't win. Now, the site is I was very surprised at how easy it was to get to the site. One time when I went, I was getting off the bus at Hamilton Park less than 10 minutes from getting on the bus at Port Authority. So depending on traffic, it's very, very convenient to get to. There's not much to see there. There's a monument with a bust and some commemorative plaques. But I felt a real sense of history when I was there. You also have some wonderful unobstructed views of Manhattan. Now, Burr sings in The World Was Wide Enough. I should have known the world was wide enough for Hamilton and me. And there's also a scene in the Hamilton documentary filmed here at the Museum of American Finance, when Miranda and Leslie Odom Jr., who originally played Aaron Burr in the show, are examining replica pistols. While they're mock loading the pistols, they're pouring the gunpowder in and ramming it down. Miranda turns to Odom and says, "There's so much time to apologize." But as we know, Hamilton never does, and it ends badly for him. And Weehawken was also the site where Hamilton's son Philip was aiming for the sky, as sung in "Blow Us All Away," and lost his duel to George Eaker. This happened prior to Hamilton and Burr's duel. And like Alexander, Philip died from his wounds more than a day later. Now, Miranda jumps around in the show a lot because it has so much history to cover. So the connection between the songs and the sites isn't often apparent, or even strong. Even a place like Trinity Church, which has a strong Hamilton connection. He's buried there. Apparently, it's a must-stop on the tourist circuit because there's crowds there all the time. It just gets a mention in a song that Eliza sings about Angelica, and she's buried in Trinity Church near you. Weehawken is different. If you have the chance to go there on your own, not as part of a tour group, but when you have time to spend there, walk around Hamilton Park, sit on the benches, and listen to Philip's duel and Blow Us All Away and Stay Alive. And listen to the Burr-Hamilton duel and The World Was Wide Enough. And you'll really appreciate what Miranda's done and his talent and his ability to make you care about and be personally invested in history. I've mentioned the documentary a few times. As mentioned earlier, it's called Hamilton's America, and it gives a behind-the-scenes look at Hamilton, the show. It aired last month on PBS, and you can still stream it, I think, until November 18th. If you haven't seen it, it really is worth a watch. This is a picture of me with the director of the documentary, Alex Horowitz, at the Uptown premiere. And here I want to give thanks to the Alexander Hamilton Awareness Society. They got me invited to this event, so that was great. But more than that, they've been very supportive in getting my book and word about my book out there. Unfortunately, I didn't find them or know about them while I was writing the book. So I wasn't able to consult with them about any of the content. But after it came out, they've really helped me meet people. They contributed a little bit of additional content later on, and have been wonderful. So now I'm back to the questions. Who here has seen the documentary? More than once? Are any of the youngsters in the back streaming it right now? Okay. For me, the documentary is just more evidence of the impact of Hamilton and how it's made its way into areas where Broadway just doesn't go. The documentary was watched by more than 3.6 million people during the first weekend it aired. Miranda, in recognizing in the documentary that Broadway just doesn't typically get off the arts page and responding to a question about what do you do next, says that Hamilton is singular, the man and the creation of the show. And what he meant is that there won't be another of either of them. I think Miranda also belongs in that category, a singular talent that put this tremendous show together, and we're all very fortunate that he did. Not only has Miranda made people aware of Hamilton's life and legacy and made them care about it, he spiked interest in all things related to the foundation and formation of our country. I was in Philadelphia last month to visit some of the sites down there, and was amazed to see the crowds of school children at the National Constitution Center. I didn't even know there was a National Constitution Center before that. And the level of interest they had. It's not a stretch to say that Miranda is the biggest reason for that. Last week, I came across a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon, of all things. I wanted to show you a picture of it, licensing laws, things like that. But I thought it perfectly summed up what Miranda has accomplished. Calvin's talking to Hobbes, of course, and he says, they say the world is a stage, but obviously the play is unrehearsed, and everybody is ad-libbing the lines. And to me, that's a good description of history, which gets made up as we go along, pushed and pulled by the events, mores, and learnings of the time. Even Alexander Hamilton did this, and I think we saw evidence of that earlier this week. Calvin then says, we need more special effects and dance numbers. And that's what Miranda did for us. He took history, which can be a bit stale and hard to follow at times, and he gave us special effects, music, and dance numbers, and greatly increased the appeal. Now, I know that I'm coming off as a huge fan of Miranda, which I am, unapologetically. I really do believe that people throwing his name around with Shakespeare isn't a stretch. Yay, Hamlet. But in case any of you think I'm not equally a fan of Alexander Hamilton, I wanted to leave you with an image that I put together, which also gives you kind of my thoughts on Thomas Jefferson. And I wanted to end with the quote from Jefferson Hamilton's biggest political adversary. Hamilton really is a colossus to the anti-Republican Party. Without numbers, he is a host within himself. Thank you.